Economists at the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries joined the growing chorus of voices pointing to a slowdown in the global economy for 2023.
Kristalina Georgieva, the director of the International Monetary Fund, said during the first weekend of January that one-third of the world's economy could be in recession this year, with Europe expected to suffer the worst. Nancy Kyle reporting.
Ukraine rescue workers have finished their search and rescue operations at the site of a Russian strike that hit a residential building last Saturday.
Rescuers saved 39 people, including 6 children, and 44 people died, including 5 children, the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense said. 5 children have been left orphans, National Police Chief Igor Klemenko said in a statement. Ukrainian presidential advisor Oleksiy Arestovich has resigned after erroneously saying the rocket that struck the residential building in Dnipro was shot down by Ukrainian air defenses on national television after the attack. Harry Michaels reporting.
House Speaker Kevin McCarthy insisted that he always had some questions related to now Representative George Santos' resume amid ongoing revelations about the lies and embellishments by the freshman lawmaker from New York.
Among the claims related to Santos is that in 2021 a campaign staffer of his had masqueraded as McCarthy's chief of staff in a bid to gin up support for Santos, as reported by the New York Times last week. McCarthy said that it happened and I know they corrected it, but I was not notified about that until a later day. Davis Richards reporting.
Former European Parliament member Pier Antonio Panzeri said he will work with prosecutors investigating an alleged bribery scheme.
Panzeri agreed to offer revealing, truthful and complete statements about third parties involved in the scandal as well as his own involvement if applicable in exchange for a possible reduced prison sentence, Belgium's federal prosecutor said. Haley White reporting.
This is the latest news headlines. China's population shrank for the first time in decades last year as the birth rate plunged, official figures showed this week, adding to pressure on leaders to keep the economy growing despite an aging workplace and at a time of rising tensions with the U.S. Despite the official numbers, some experts believe China's population has been in decline for a few years, a dramatic turn in the country that once sought to control such a population through one-child policy. A failed Republican candidate who authorities said was angry over his defeat in November is facing numerous charges in connection with drive-by shootings targeting the home of a Democratic lawmaker in New Mexico's largest city. 39-year-old Solomon Pena was arrested after SWAT officers took him into custody and served search warrants at his home, police said. Pena, a felon whose criminal past has been a controversial issue during last year's campaign. U.S. motorists are seeing the price at the gas pump move higher as the broader energy complex trades higher on the reopening of China, the world's second-largest economy. Crude oil prices have been on the rise for much of January, rising some 8% just last week. West Texas Intermediate, the U.S. benchmark for the price of oil, was up 1.2% to touch $81 a barrel, its highest since early December. Comedian Leslie Jones took a temporary whirl as the host of The Daily Show this week, as she says viewers expected her trademark some blunt, edgy humor. I'm not Jon Stewart, I'm not Trevor Noah, I'm Leslie Jones. So I'll be bringing that vulnerable honesty, the Saturday Night Live alumni joked in an interview on the eve of her new gig. Jones stood in as host on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday on the Comedy Central topical show. And that's the latest news headlines. I'm Alan Edwards.
Are you living with pain? I was, after a nasty fall. I got relief with 1 Hour Pain Relief. I'm Barry Yarkoni, president, and here's Lisa, a Marine who was injured in Iraq.
After surviving an explosion, I was on horrible painkillers for lingering head, shoulder, back, and knee pain. But I hated the dangers and side effects. My friend told me about 1 Hour Pain Relief, and now I'm off the drugs.
1 Hour Pain Relief is the result of 15 years of research on an amazing extract from hops, the plant used to flavor beer.
Whether your pain is from an injury or just aging, you get safe, all-day relief in less than 1 hour.
We're so sure you'll love 1 Hour Pain Relief, too, that we'll send you a 1-week trial for just a small shipping charge. Call 800-269-9500 right now. That's 800-269-9500. There's no gimmicks, no obligation, no automatic shipments. Stop living with pain. Call 800-269-9500 for your 1-week trial or visit onehourpainrelief.com. That's 800-269-9500.
So you want to go green? How about going green with your greenbacks? Try aspiration.com. Shares your values on the environment and climate change. Ever wonder what the big banks do with your deposits? Well, it goes to fossil fuel companies for sure. Not at aspiration.com. Your deposits will never fund fossil fuel projects like pipelines, oil rigs, and coal mines. With aspiration.com, you get 55,000 free in-network ATMs, 3 to 5% cash back on conscientious coalition purchases, personal impact score to help you shop to match your values, and an option to plant a tree with every roundup. Deposits in your Aspiration Spend and Save account are FDIC insured up to $2.46 million per deposit by being swept to FDIC member institutions. To find out more, you can go to aspiration.com/revolution.
This is the Jeff Santos Show on the Revolution Radio Network. Rebuilding America, together, investing, activism, and supporting the middle class. Now, here's Jeff.
Thank you, Josh, and good afternoon, Americans, and welcome to the Jeff Santos Show. It is great to be with you on this Friday edition of the program. It is so good to be with you again as we make our way through a rainy Friday here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We have a great program for you today, our 1-hour show. We've been doing it now for a couple of weeks. Again, on this 20th day of January, we're going to see what happens come March 1st, but more than likely, all things go well, and we hope that's the case. We'll go back to at least 2 hours, if not 3. There's so many great guests that we have that we can't all fit in all the time. And, we're lucky in the sense that our good friend Harvey K is on 2 weeks of vacation, so we can bring you more of MTC and others. But it is obviously a need for the program to continue to give these really special guests that we have and unique to the country's airwaves. Mainstream media doesn't cover to do that. So we're working on that. Got a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes here at Jeff Santos Communications. So with that, we're going to talk to John Shelton coming up in a few minutes. He is, of course, the University of Wisconsin Green Bay professor of democracy studies, and a fantastic one at that. He's also the vice president of AFT Wisconsin. So join us at 3:10. Then we'll talk to MTC, as aforementioned, the great executive director of Democracy Watch News, the Renaissance man of the Jeff Santos Show. And we'll get into all of that with MTC. Lots going on in Seattle, the housing concern, Ms. Sawant leaving city council. We'll get into all that with our good man of the 206. I was going to just barge in today and not say good afternoon as I usually do, kind of the opening theme of the show. And then it's Joe Biden, Joe Biden, Joe Biden. Because I think when you get down to this, for the next 2 years, the Democratic Party has to move in a direction, and either Joe Biden moves with it or he has to step aside, or as Larry Cohen said yesterday, somebody has to challenge him, which would make things more problematic. But I think that might have to be done. All right, so just have a couple of minutes here before we get into our conversation with Mr. Shelton. Again, the phone number remains the same, by the way, 833-545-5333 if you want to share your opinion on that topic for the day. And we'll do it with both Shelton and Canfield if you want to throw yourself in there. You can email me, Jeff, at revolutionboston.com. That's Jeff with a J. And, of course, text us. Can't text us yet, but maybe that's coming up soon. You can go ahead and tweet at us, I should say, at Facebook and Twitter at Jeff Santos Show. So, I'm reading a whole bunch of things, and an article from Jonathan Alter. He used to be on this program quite a bit, been years. It's a little bit more centrist for me, but he makes a good point about Joe Biden getting in this morass that we talked about with Paleologos and Jerry Austin. And, you know, how long is he going to be in this? How long do you go into the fetal position and, you know, and do a couple of interviews here and there? Apparently did one with MSNBC, I think, recently, you know, and talking about all the good things he's accomplished. Yes, that's fine. But you're going to have to do more than that. You're going to have to, you know, appear on shows like mine. You're going to have to go on the road, and you're going to have to start doing it soon. Now, as Jerry Austin talked about, a consultant who's worked with a lot of different people, he doesn't know if Biden is up to it. Not only is he 80 years old, but he's not exactly the best communicator in the world. This is a guy that's well known for the flubs. So if that's the case, is this the person you want in 2024 running for the nomination? Even if it's against Trump, what do you get in 2025? How do you make that 4 years successful? Don't forget, you're going to have to win the House and Senate to get anything done in 2024 for 2025. So my view is this. The best thing is Joe Biden run hard over these next several months. And I think we'll understand at that point that he is good for another year and a half, 2 years, you know, the end of 2024. But he lets somebody else run. And I think it should be up to the Democratic voters, Democratic Party voters, to choose that person. And, you know, obviously a lot of people will be shooting for Miss Harris. But again, I'm not sure that she's the standard bearer either that we should get behind. I haven't seen no evidence of this. So there needs to be other people that step up. Bernie Sanders is one of them, but my God, we need a lot more than one person. So whether it's Elizabeth Warren or somebody else, we need to think about that. And I believe that one part of this that I think is critical is that labor has to get involved. Unions are going to be critical in making sure the Democrats connect with the working class. Nobody better to talk about unions and the working class is our next guest. He is, of course, the professor of democracy studies at the University of Wisconsin, Green Bay. He's also the vice president of Wisconsin AFT. He is John Shelton, and he joins us from Green Bay, WI. Hello, happy Friday, Mr. John. How are you?
Happy Friday, Jeff. How you doing?
Hanging in there. Lots going on in the Santos world. That's nothing to do with the other guy in New York, and who probably doesn't even have his name. He just took it because it sounds good in the Latino community in New York. But anyway,
he probably heard about your show and was like, "Let me capture some of that. I'll call myself George Santos."
Yes, exactly. As long as he didn't steal the first name too, that would have been really problematic. But anyways, we got much to talk about, and I want to basically start where Larry Cohen kind of finished with us yesterday. Of course, the former head of CWA, the head of our revolution, and a chair of the Bernie Sanders campaign in 2016. And that is the importance of unions and the importance of President Biden using the executive orders to help his friends who are in the union world. As you and I have talked about so much, this is a critical component of the Democratic Party because that is the folks you want on the front line communicating with the working class. You don't want people who are stuck in the Beltway, who make $500,000 a year, who don't understand the difference between a shovel and a rake. They need to understand, what people in rural America, the exurbs, the inner city, how they live. And you're not going to do that unless you have people who come from that area. And that's, of course, labor. And whether they're teachers or nurses or people who work in the construction phase, whatever, you're going to need that. John?
Yeah. Do you mind if I introduce a little quick history lesson today? Is that all right?
Yeah, go ahead. We need that.
Okay. So I don't know if your listeners know this. Today is January 20th. It is the 30-year anniversary of Bill Clinton's inauguration as president. His first term, 1993. And
I was actually at his inauguration, by the way.
Were you?
And freezing my behind off. Yes. I was sick as a dog. In fact, I was supposed to go to the inauguration ball, but I didn't go because I was
Okay.
Anyways, go ahead.
So
I remember it.
I'm working on a piece about this. Haven't got it out there yet, but this is a moment really to kind of reflect on the trajectory the Democratic Party has taken, particularly with regard to working people. And in the 30s and 40s, the Democratic Party, really put pro-worker reforms at the center of its agenda. Right? I mean, you've got the National Labor Relations Act, you've got minimum wage, you've got the Social Security Act, and into the 50s and 60s, right? I mean, Johnson administration, Medicare, Medicaid, Elementary and Secondary Education Act, these big, social reforms that really promised to make and did make the lives of working people better. Now, let's don't kind of sugarcoat all of the deficiencies there, right? Like there were problems with those laws, particularly in the 30s around race. But the point is that the Democratic Party had a laser focus on economic security for working people during those decades, and it's not a surprise that they held Congress virtually that entire period from the 1930s until you actually get to Clinton in 1994. There were only 4 years that Republicans had the House in that entire time. And so, so
very, very much true. There was the Do Nothing Congress in the 40s, and again, he had sort of a control of the House, and Reagan did in the early 80s, but it was won back in 82, and the Democrats won, by the way. Well, they didn't have control of the House with numbers. Tip O'Neill was still the Speaker, but they had enough Democrats who would vote with Republicans, to get all the Jack Kemp stuff and all that done. Then again, they took it back in 82. And again, the Senate was Republican until 1986. But go ahead.
Exactly, right? So, so what I'm saying is that for most of that period, right, Democrats were in control of Congress and could really set the agenda. Carter does some things to move away in the context of the economic crisis in the 1970s from, focus on economic security. But it's really Clinton that moves the party in the direction that has, pushed us into so much problematic territory over the past, 20, 30 years, right? And the big piece of this, there's a lot of things, but, the sort of big symbol of this is NAFTA, right? Which Clinton, negotiates, building on negotiations George H.W. Bush had already done. And actually, the only way Clinton gets NAFTA passed is by a majority of Republican votes, right?
Yes.
And Clinton had to basically go to Republicans and say, if you get criticized in the 94 midterms for supporting NAFTA, I'm going to support you. And so that's actually the moment when, Democrats kind of lose the ability to have that sort of like, long-term control of Congress, to that contract for America. And part of the reason for that is because millions of labor union members sat out that election, right? The AFL-CIO, which had done a lot to support Clinton in 92, basically were like, you're going to support NAFTA, like, we're not backing you. And
Dick Gephardt led the Democrats. The Democrats did not support it. It took the Republicans in Gingrich at the time, to pull that off. I remember because I was in Washington, living in a basement apartment, and basically trying to figure out, this is the guy that the Democrats just nominated. We got to go. Not exactly fun times.
Yeah,
which of course led to the 94 debacle.
Yeah. So the Clinton sort of Democratic Leadership Council approach has been one that basically told the majority of working people, we don't really care about you. Like, we don't care about labor. They take us for granted. And, they basically said, like economic security, jobs for working people, that's not our priority. Now, the Biden administration has moved away from that in some really good ways, right? I mean, the bipartisan infrastructure plan, something we talked about, I can't remember if this was last week or a couple weeks ago, the shift away from the abuse of non-compete contracts. But this isn't gonna be enough. And I think the entire political future of this country hinges on whether working people, number one, feel as if they can be part, like that this political system is going to work for them, right? And those are working people, no matter what their race is, can this political system actually, improve their lives for the better? And then which party's going to do that, right? And so, in my view, and I know you agree with me and probably all of your listeners, the Democratic Party is the only party capable of doing that, right? I mean, the Republican Party is a party that's built on, just breaking things and, feeding on grievances. And so
Right.
I think Cohen is absolutely right. I mean, first of all, the failure of the Democratic administration to do anything about the PRO Act, we don't have to rehash, the failure to overcome a filibuster, that looms large. But at this point, right, if what you can primarily do, given the dynamics of Congress, are executive orders, those are absolutely things Biden should be doing right now, telling anybody who has a contract with the federal government, you break unions, you engage in unfair labor practices. We're canceling our contracts, and that's one of the biggest powers that the federal government has, is its ability to, all that money that's being spent and all these corporations that want to have a part of it. There's a lot that he could do unilaterally, and basically like showcase that to working people, show them how this is how like voting for Democrats actually move the needle. And then whatever Biden decides to do in the next election, whether he runs or somebody else runs, that's going to be associated with the Democratic Party, which is going to make whomever the candidate is more successful.
Talking with John Shelton, again, professor of democracy studies, University of Wisconsin, Green Bay. Of course, he's also the vice president of the American Federation of Teachers, Wisconsin. He's the vice president of the Wisconsin chapter. Now, I just want to say one thing before we take a call from both Mark and John in a couple of minutes here. I just think that, again, what Larry was also alluding to in the interview yesterday, and I urge people to go to whether it's Facebook Live or YouTube or Twitch and check that out. The last edition of the programming is up there. I just think that it is so critically important for the Democratic Party to understand that, if Biden doesn't start doing these things that you just mentioned, that Larry mentioned yesterday, they're going to need another candidate, because you can't tell young people, and when you were a part of it and still are in Wisconsin on Starbucks, you can't tell the folks at Amazon that, look, sorry, it's too big of a heavy lift for me. I got my corporate donors I got to worry about. So, you just do your thing. It's not going to fly. You don't mobilize people that way. And it's not just about winning the White House. You got to win the Senate. You got to win the House. And, and you got to put your people forward to get out to vote, because then in 2 years, in 2026, you got all these governors up. Look at the scenario that you guys have been in for a decade in Wisconsin. Michigan just took back over a decade. And so these things, so folks in the choice community are dealing with this in Texas and Florida and all the states that Republicans control, 22 of them, and what they're going to do with the issue of women's right to choose. So, all these things, and, you need somebody who's the titular head of the Democratic Party and now the president, to be able to sort of, give you a roadmap and a guide map. You cannot play, well, I'll take 10% if you can give me 20. You can't play that game. Your quick thoughts. I'm going to take a call.
It's all about narrative, right? And again, that's how Democrats were able to hold Congress for all those years, right? They were able to say, like, if you work in this country,
we are the people, the working class.
We are the people that are looking out for you, and Democrats have lost that. They've lost that, and that's what Biden has to recapture. Just going to remind everybody, like 60% of Americans do not have college degrees. The Democratic Party cannot be the party of only people with college degrees.
Only 29% of Americans have a college degree, according to the EPI. So, it's almost 70%, that are there, John. And, you can't depend upon that. It just can't. And, you have to be able to communicate that message. And who better than labor? And let's start with our good friend Mark, who, of course, has been a long-time labor leader in California. You are next with John Shelton. Go right ahead, Mark. Mark in California, can you hear me?
Can you hear me? Hello,
yes, go right ahead. Yes, I can.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna keep pushing for this income inequality as being the number one issue in this country. And I'm going to say that to do that, we have to address three issues. One, we need to change this immoral tax code. Number two, we have to make labor laws that will help labor and unions so we can negotiate contracts once we get one. And three is basically strengthen these safety nets, get Medicare for all, basically free college in this country, and go with a big, bold agenda saying that income inequality is the problem, and we have to identify the issues which are causing it. And those are the ones that I see as the problem, that we need to go boldly and just say we're going to take on the corporations and 1% and help the American people.
I agree. John?
Yeah, Mark, couldn't agree more. First of all, when you have reactionary Republicans who are mobilizing grievances among different kinds of working people, the thing to do is to show that the real culprits for the rampant economic inequality and the lack of opportunity for working people in this country are corporate leaders, people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. Let's identify them by name. And to your point about unionizing, I'd like to make this point. I've just been reading this great book by David Madlin from the Center of American Progress about how to sort of reimagine unions in this country. And what David says, and he's right about this, but we don't often say this enough, it's not enough to just have laws that are sort of neutral toward labor unions. We need to actively be encouraging workers to organize.
Exactly.
That our laws have to do that, because that's the only way, and combined with those other things, but it's sort of a necessary but insufficient. It's necessary to have workers with a very strong labor movement in this country to do something about the inequality you identified.
It's so
John,
important. And when Bernie Sanders ran, he actually wanted to have them unionized. Go ahead, Mark.
I just wanted to say that we've got to do something about making it easier to negotiate contracts. It's one thing to unionize, but once you do that, sitting in there with your hand tied behind your back, with the way that these labor laws are set up, it's really tough to get a contract. It really is. Yeah. And that's got to change.
You know it.
Yeah, 100%. And that's something that the PRO Act would do, actually. It would mandate a first contract when recalcitrant employers were, not negotiating in good faith.
Well, that's something, in my opinion, that, frankly, Biden has to campaign on. He has an advocate in Secretary of Labor Marty Walsh, a friend of the program, friend of yours truly, and put him on the road. I mean, he's got relationships all around this country with the trades people and so forth. You should be able to get the support in Congress if these folks are coming to Congress and saying, look, you can't say you're the best union presidency and Congress give us a middle finger. You can't do that. So
well, and you know what you might do, right? Like if Biden, the Biden administration, if he is going to run for another term, and they know, what say Starbucks is doing to prevent their workers from getting a contract, how about if Biden shows up at some Starbucks with the workers, listens to their grievances, magnifies that.
Well, I was asking the Biden administration, and they did some, clandestine, appearance. But this should have been a Rose Garden thing with both the woman who helped the Buffalo Starbucks get the first victory, and then, of course, Kristen Smalls from Amazon. They should have a big event. If you are the union president, show it up in the Rose Garden. Make it clear that this is who we are. But it was
no question, and that would reach not just those individual workers at Starbucks, but it would show anybody else working in that kind of retail outfit, hey, the president wants you to unionize and is going to do everything in his power to help you. And if reelected and winning back, Congress with a majority where you can break the filibuster, PRO Act's going to be first on the agenda. So you're not going to have to deal with this stuff anymore.
Yeah, it is. To me, it's so important. Again, the unions are the critical piece here of negotiating, or at the very least, being the first person to say that I hear you, Mr. and Mrs. non-union working class Americans. And, and Biden can obviously give them more credibility if they celebrate what they've already done, which has been, as you say, a lot more impressive than the previous 3 Democratic presidents. So,
exactly.
But you can't rest on your laurels. That'll get you nowhere. It's like it's a football team that's great in the regular season. Come to playoffs, big choke. That means goodbye.
And I would say the Biden's more like 10-7, not one of those dominant records anyway.
Yeah, you're not 16-2 or 16-1. I can tell you that. Hey, have a great weekend, man. Watch some football.
Jeff.
Get away from all this political craziness. All the best,
too,
man.
Jeff.
We'll talk to you next Friday.
All right, bye.
Thank you. We'll be right back. It's the Jeff Santos Show. MTC on deck.
Haul packages for a living? A gas-powered Mercedes-Benz Sprinter delivers. Transport people? A Sprinter van with 0% financing is a 5-star idea. If food delivery is your thing, then a gas Sprinter caters to you. And if you're a general contractor, the Sprinter with 0% financing nails it. With innovation, safety, and technology, Sprinter is built for you. And it's built for your bottom line with 0% financing. The Mercedes-Benz Sprinter, starting at just $33,790.
You don't have to wait for amazing deals on a new floor. Get spring Black Friday deals right now at Lumber Liquidators Flooring. This week, save up to 35% on gorgeous hardwood and waterproof vinyl floors. Plus, we can arrange for installation by professional, independent contractors. And with special financing, you can get started today. These are the floors homes are built on. Lumber Liquidators Flooring.
I'm Rich Rosario. 1 in 4 heart attack survivors will have another cardiovascular event. Award-winning author and American Heart Association volunteer Dr. Nisa Goldberg explains the hidden risks.
Many people don't realize that managing hidden risks like untreated high blood pressure, unhealthy eating habits, and poor medication adherence may reduce your risk for having another heart attack.
The American Heart Association's Secondary Heart Attack Prevention Initiative, sponsored by Bayer, reminds you to follow your doctor's recommendations to help reduce your risk factors.
Take your medication as prescribed. Certain medicines like aspirin can lower your risk of another cardiac event. Aspirin is not appropriate for everyone, so be sure to talk to your doctor before you begin an aspirin regimen. It's important to understand your medications and take them correctly. Manage risk factors like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and diabetes. Quit smoking, eat healthier, and get active.
Learn more ways to thrive after a heart attack at heart.org/oneisenough.
Hi, I'm Karen, owner of Lone Star Transfer. If you are a timeshare owner, getting out is probably a top priority. And now that annual maintenance fees are coming due, this ongoing burden and expense is at the top of your list. Thankfully, we can help. Let us do for you what we have done for thousands of others across the country. Our process is done legally, ethically, and quickly. Lone Star Transfer has a 99% success rate and an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. We are a family-owned business and will personally make sure your experience is a pleasant one. Don't let another day go by with maintenance fees taking your hard-earned money. Give us a call for a no-obligation consultation at 844-284-4863. That's 844-284-4863 or online at lonestartransfer.com. That's lonestartransfer.com.
Supporting the middle class. This is the Jeff Santos Show.
"33 minutes past the hour. It is the Jeff Santos Show that you are tuned into, coming to you live from the South Coast here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. It's the end of the week, folks, and of course, our last segment, we saved the best for last. Our good friend, the Renaissance man of the Jeff Santos Show. He, of course, is the executive director of Democracy Watch News. He is our friend MTC, and he joins us from the 206 in Seattle, WA, and here he is with his guitar. Hello, MTC.
You slow me down the river, you don't want me anymore. Yeah, you slow me down the river, and there's a vessel to the shore. Yeah, you slow me down the river, cause you don't want my loving anymore.
My God, Elvis is in the house. There you go. You get some
Jeff.
Memphis blues going on, are you?
Hey, I love the blues that you've been playing on your program as bumper music. I don't know who that is, but I want to pick up that track. But that song is called Sold Me Down the River. It's now available on Spotify and Apple Music and TikTok and YouTube and all over the place because I got to deal with TuneCore.
Way to go.
We're distributing that song out there. So more to come in that area. It's been a crazy week, Jeff.
Hey,
But
is
I'm
that
glad
a
to
new
be
guitar, by the way? I haven't seen that one before. It's very, very cool.
I have played this once before when I did this song. That song is kind of for the Republicans in the House, but I did use this song once before when I sang about Trump when I said, "Mr. Boss Man,
Now that's right.
don't you
Yes,
hear
yes.
us when we call?" I said, "You ain't so big now. You just talk. That's all." Yeah.
Oh, Dad, the Boss Man. Well,
Yeah,
the
that's an
Boss
old.
Man, has a lot of warts. I can tell you that. Hey, I want to get to a lot of things with you, particularly David Crosby and the death of the great musician, songwriter, and political activist. But I must tell you, I read something yesterday. I know we haven't had a chance to talk about this, so I'm not surprising you because I just came across this last night. But the retirement or impending retirement of Miss Sawant from the city council, and what I read yesterday. What is the latest on that? Because I know that you're relatively close with her. I read an article that was not, very welcoming to her colleague in crime, Miss Jayapal. What is the latest going on there, Mark?
Well, she says, that she wants to retire. She's not going to seek re-election for her seat on the city council, and I'm kind of shocked by that. But considering what I
Yeah.
know about her, I assume that she has other plans. So, I wouldn't be surprised if she decides to run for another office. So we're going to wait and see. I asked one of the people that has been supporting her for years, and he was he had he
Yeah.
was closed mouth. He didn't want to tell me too much. That's actually Philip Locker, who she's married to. So yeah, I'm not really sure what she has in mind, but I'm assuming it's going to be something very interesting because I cannot see her just going away as as who was
Well, I
it,
guess is the
MacArthur.
mayor position. That would be the one that I would think, right? And I don't know when you guys do your mayor's race, but that would be the most likely one, right?
That would be incredible to have a mayor like Shama Sawant for Seattle. Of course, we will miss her on the city council because she's the only city council member who has been such an activist and such a spokesperson for the working class and for poor people in this city. So I hope that they find someone to run in her place that is at least somewhat as progressive and alternative minded as she is, because the people who are struggling in this town. I mean, we've been talking about the Seattle Initiative 135. Jeff, some of the new apartments in Seattle are rented for $5,000 a
1,000.
month.
That's insane.
This is
I
crazy.
mean,
It's New York,
you know,
San Francisco prices. So we need
let me
someone
ask
like her.
you
She's
this.
been talking about rent control, which we definitely need in this city.
Right.
So, I could see her as the mayor for rent control. That would be great. And maybe she could adopt, the slogan from the candidate in New York: the rents are too damn high. Because when it comes to $5,000 a month, when most people in the city are not working high-tech jobs or, biomed, they're actually working food service and clerical and retail jobs near minimum wage. There's no way to sustain that kind of economy in this city. So I'm
Well,
hoping
what
that
about
she
the
will.
Starbucks workers? I mean, if you're working in the city and going to school part time, and all the great universities there in Seattle, I mean, how are you gonna have 15 people in a house? I mean, what is this? I mean, it's insane. Let me ask you this,
Yeah.
and I don't know if you can, on top of your head, but I mean, the people who let Bezos get all the free land that he has taken over in Seattle, I mean, those are people who should be really held, responsible for this BS. Because the mayor and presumably the governors in the past too, must have given away, tremendous amount of real estate to Bezos and for all those offices, and then on top of that, the people who are the developers to build all those apartments, next door. I mean, they're not the only city. I mean, we've done it here in Boston, New York. I mean, I remember my friends, who were involved in the music industry in Soho and places like that. They were wiped out. All the local music stores and stuff, all out because people bought into, the high end, Neiman markup kind of stores going into Soho and places and so on. And this is what has happened, and it's happening everywhere. But Seattle is a place that, has pushed back on a lot of the, neoliberal viewpoints that has dominated the Democratic Party that we just talked about. But I mean, I don't know if anybody, is responsible, but probably like the last 4 or 5 mayors, come to mind.
Yeah, I mean,
so she can run against those folks.
They're always running as progressives, saying that everyone in Seattle has a right to a place to live. And then once they get into office, they get bought off by the developers and the huge corporations. Yeah. My favorite music store, which had over $3 million inventory, just walls and walls of guitars, Jeff. It was my favorite place to go. 2 blocks from where I live is now a Google development, multi-billion-dollar Google development. And they told me, they said, we're a Guitar Center. We have stores all across the country, and we're like little fish in this pond. I mean, Google just came in and bought them out. There was nothing they could do. So yeah, we've seen that over and over again. So the only response that I've seen lately is this Initiative 135, because it doesn't rely on Jeff Bezos to do the right thing. It doesn't rely on Microsoft or Boeing or Google or any of these other companies here. What it does is it tells the people that we are going to invest. The city has property that it owns that could be used to house people. And we need labor unions involved, and we need all these activist groups to get involved. And we need management of these places by the tenants so that it doesn't turn out to be some top-down hierarchical structure. I mean, that's the only alternative I can see, Jeff. And it's happened in other cities and other countries. If you go to the website, houseourneighbors.org, which is the Yes on I-135 website here, they talk about cities in Austria and France, even Uruguay and Canada, where housing is considered a public good, which is something that Bernie Sanders was saying here, 20 years ago when he came to Seattle at the behest of another city council member at that time, to talk about housing as a right. And he was trying to push that in Burlington, Vermont, where he became mayor. So we need to see that here. And if Kshama Sawant can become mayor of Seattle, we might get some progress. But we've also got some programs coming from folks like Frank Chop, who's another great housing activist in our state legislature. And even Governor Inslee's talking about, housing people and the higher rents in Washington state. So I think it's finally, the politicians have finally got a clue after how long, and they finally realized after doing these surveys that the top 2 priorities amongst voters in Washington state is high rents and homelessness. So we got to do something about it. It might as well start here. I'm tired of seeing these homeless encampments all across the country in all the major cities. And as I always said, if they were on an international border, they would qualify for assistance from the Red Cross and the United Nations. But because they're under
You're not far. What are you? You're an hour and a half from the Canadian border, where you are in 206 there in Seattle. You're not far. I mean, I've driven to Vancouver when I spent time in Seattle.
I cannot think of one major political leader in Washington, D.C. outside of a few members of Congress like Pramila Jayapal who even talk about homelessness as an issue in this country. They're too busy fighting their petty political party battles.
They want the real estate developers, who are giving them campaign dollars, back home, and it's a tragedy. It really is. Hey, I want to get back to this article that our good friend Stephen in California sent to me on Sawant. There's 2 things that I'm worried about for her perspective. Not so much about her career. She doesn't seem a person that's career focused, but she doesn't. She takes a real dig at AOC and talks about the squad and doing more. I thought that was really a cheap shot, and B, not smart politically. Number 2, she also in this article talks about the fact that that Jayapal and the Progressive Caucus hasn't done enough. Now, I don't necessarily disagree with those assumptions, but to actually put it in print, I don't think that's smart. And I'm wondering what you're hearing, because I know you have a great relationship with the Jayapal folks when they see this kind of article, whether or not, there is already tension there. Because my view, as much as I love, people's spirit and the DSA and so forth, and she criticized the Democratic Socialists of America as well in that piece, I'm like, you're putting yourself on an island. Now, if you want to run for mayor and you can do that and you can win, all more power to you. But it's not the way to kind of bring people together. And I'm wondering, if that is at all, if this article is at all backfired and potentially it could. I mean, it's only been out, I guess, 48 hours or so. But your thoughts on that, Mark? Because I hate to see her, go off, the deep end, because she has some incredible talent, to withstand the pressure from Bezos and all the money that they poured in to defeat her. And she's going to need allies. So I'm hoping that, maybe it was a misquote or something, but your thoughts on that?
I think that she's sorely disappointed in the Democratic Party. So she may be
Well, we
looking to
all are.
join the People's Party. She's already a member of the Socialist
No,
Alternative
that's a
Party.
disaster, I
So,
think.
so I think that she is just fed up with the Democrats, and this is her way of speaking out. And I think if she's not a city council member, I think she feels like she'll be allowed more freedom to speak out in this more radical way. Now, whether it's a smart political move or not, I'm not so sure either, because she is alienating some of her allies in the Democratic Party. And I'm hoping that somehow, coalitions can come together, including progressive Democrats. I've worked with Progressive Democrats of America, so I know that there are some good people in the Democratic Party. I've always been a supporter of Bernie Sanders. Considering the alternatives, AOC is like a shining angel. So, yeah,
Right.
I don't necessarily
Exactly.
agree with everything
Not
she
perfect
said.
by any stretch, but
But I think
but she's also 32 years of age. So I mean, give her a break. She was a bartender less than 10 years ago. I mean, it's hard for me to criticize her. When she's trying to make her way, and people out ready to try to kill her as well. On top of that, so
obviously,
I mean, it's
she wants to light a fire under the Democratic Party, hoping that it will change some and move some people in the right direction. Whether she ends up burning her bridges or not, we'll see. She is one of those politicos who just continually comes back, and they never seem to be able to defeat her. As long as she has grassroots support, at least in this city, she may be able to win without the major Democratic Party support. But in terms of running for Congress or Senate, I'm not so sure.
I don't think she has a future in Washington. I don't. But she could look. I mean, if she could figure a way, to bring in a coalition to win her the mayoralty, then because she'll be in the biggest city, then she's a candidate for governor. So you could go that track and avoid Washington her entire life. So I mean, but she has to be able to build something that is more than just the DSA. I mean, you're not gonna be able to win over people who think of a socialist as some kind of foreigner. I mean, again, a lot of younger people understand the differences between Bernie Sanders, DSA, and Stalin, but there are a lot of people who don't know anything about politics either. So, but I want to bring in our good friend John in Minneapolis, because not only does he understand this, but he is represented by Miss Omar, who, of course, the Democrats as a whole have tried to defeat, even when she's an incumbent. And maybe there's some similarities here. Again, Omar is in Congress. She has actually been a target of Ms. Sawant in the sense of the Progressive Caucus. She's number 2 to Jayapal. And let's see if John has anything to say in this. John, you're next with Mark Taylor Canfield. Go right ahead, sir. John in Minnesota.
Yes. Yeah, I think that once a person gets in power, they do kind of move to where, they move more towards the center than they would if they, like, for instance, if Omar was in the city council, she could afford to represent, one area of the city and be, a lot more, I would say, to the left. It's just a problem of our politics, which is so conservative and so yanked to the right that it's almost impossible, especially if you get to the center of power, which is Washington, D.C., to not move away. I mean, you really have to make a concerted effort not to feel that kind of pressure, to compromise. But I think that some politicians like Sawant and Bernie Sanders are very idealistic and they just stick with it. Sawant, from what I understand, she was raised as a socialist, so she understands what that means, and it was a very popular stance in in the 60s, 70s, with Gandhi, there was coalitions of socialists, Marxists. India was much more to the left than it is today. Now it's it's very right wing, run by a fascist. But that's the topic. Isn't that interesting? That's what we end up with when our political system is captured. Because from the last conversation, talking about not having enough working class people, or not having the populace really represented in politics at all, you end up with fascism. You end up with 19th century elitist, neoliberal kinds of politics, and the working class is ignored. They starve. They live horrible lives. And that's not democratic by its very nature. Of course, it's undemocratic. So anyway,
Well, thank you for that, John. No, I appreciate it. Mark, I mean, I think there was something to learn here with Omar. And I think that is an area for Sawant to study because, Omar, very progressive, to the left of Keith Ellison, who was a progressive champion, big friend of Bernie Sanders, still is. And and our revolution is, et cetera. I just think that she needs to understand if she's going to go on a national level, that she's going to have to figure out a way to construct a communication style that is not, throw a bunch of fastballs at the guy's head. I don't know if that's going to move a lot of people.
It's possible, Jeff, that she actually did reach out and got burned by the Democrats, and they just told her that we're not going to support you if you run for governor or mayor, and this is her response. But also, we also have this issue of being a city council member for multiple terms here, never quite being able to get rent control or a lot of the issues that she wanted through the city council. So I don't know what's happened within the last few months or something with her. I don't have that inside story. I actually haven't spoken to her recently, but I do plan to testify on Monday before the city council on Initiative 135, the social housing initiative, which I know that she backs and she's been a major proponent of. So I'm not sure. She's also an educator. We have to remember she has a PhD in economics and was teaching at Seattle Central College. So she may just want to go back to academia, and she may think that she has more influence over young people by being there. I don't know. By the way, I have a question for you, Jeff, but I do want to say that it is a great loss to see David Crosby pass on. His music has really influenced me on multiple generations of people. I wish that more musicians were more activist oriented and were more from the heart and spoke the truth about what's happening in this country, because we do have a problem with fascism. I mean, I responded to Harvey K the other day on Twitter saying, a description of some of the Republicans in the House of Representatives. I called them belligerent, bellicose blunderers and devious, dangerous demagogues. And that's kind of what we have today. But my question for you, Jeff, I know it's kind of off the subject, but I've been wondering for weeks now, is that a Racer X bobblehead there on the shelf behind you? What is that?
That is. You are a smart man. That is a Racer X. My buddy with Speed Racer, of course, the great TV show from the 70s, late 60s. And that's exactly what it is. I'm going to try to see if I can bring it out.
I've never
on the other
seen one.
Side.
I didn't even know that they were available.
Yes. There you go.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I want one. Where can I get one of those? That's cool. Speed Racer.
I have no idea where I get this. So, yes, he is
I have
the
something
man.
to show you too. This
you
is
know,
an
the
example of
background. He's actually Speed Racer's brother. That's the whole thing.
Oh, that's right. We weren't supposed to know that in those first few episodes. But I also have something to show you. I don't know if you can see it, but this is an example of what happens when you go to Climate Pledge Field to see the Kraken, which won yesterday.
See the Kraken.
So what this means is that when you go to Climate Pledge Arena, there is no one-time use plastic anything there. There is nothing that is immediately disposable, and that's part of this idea of trying to create a more sustainable kind of sports culture. So they give you this cup. If you buy a pop or a beer, they give you the cup, and then you can use it, for as much as, for the rest of your life or whatever.
That's great.
Which I think is really cool. It's a good example of how things can change. And one of the things I'm very proud of that the Kraken and the Climate Pledge Field Arena or Climate Pledge Arena people are pushing. So It's a good example for
Hey,
the
let
rest
me
of the
ask you,
country.
have any of the NHL players, because they have been, of all the sports leagues, very much focused on climate change. I remember the former Bruin Andrew Ference was on my show years ago talking about that, and there are others too. Some are retired now. But have any of the players come out and talk about this issue? Have the PR people of the Kraken, at all put them out to talk about this? Because athletes, and again, they're only an hour and a half from the Canadian border where a lot of these players grew up. There's a ton of players who grew up in British Columbia, as an example. So, I mean, it's not like they're without friends that could be influenced, in the western part of Canada. So, and of course, progressive Seattle. I mean, it makes perfect sense. I hope they do, because it would make sense, to promote their team, which has been really, really good this year. Again, they beat my Bruins, broke their unbeaten streak at home. But I think, and they'll probably make the playoffs on top of that, which is amazing in your second year. So, I mean, they understand how to play the game, and I would hope that their athletes get engaged. They don't have to do it every day, but I mean, why not? And if they're out smart enough to hand out those cups, that's an important thing to recycle. One more thing on Crosby. I hope that people. I hope that.
Oh, I was just going to say, it's the Democrats in Italy used to say, "Semper avanti," always ahead, right? We need to push the envelope on all of these issues, and if the Kraken can do it with their players, then I totally support that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. All right, and you should definitely have some pasta tonight. That'd be a good thing. Celebrate our friends in Italy. But I think that Crosby, in my view, should be, I don't know if you want to call it memorialized, but we should honor somebody like him, because maybe it's somebody like Vetter, our friends at U2, maybe Springsteen, but somebody who understands the power of music and how it influences society and politics. And we shouldn't just let that go. And if I'm not mistaken, he had something to say along with his colleague, another great Canadian, from Mr. Young, about what happened with Rogan. So that's another example. I only got 15 seconds, but your quick thoughts.
All I can say is David Crosby was not a perfect person, but he set a good example as a musician for folks like me. So thank you, David, wherever you're at. We love you. And as I said,
thank you, Mark.
Keep it moving forward. And
all the best.
Check out my music.
Let's keep moving
Spotify.
forward. We'll talk to you next week, my friend. We'll see you on
Thanks,
YouTube.
Jeff.
Want to thank good friend Josh for producing this broadcast, Freddie Santori, of course, our guest, MTC, and Mr. Shelton. Keep on fighting, folks. Have a great weekend. My name is Jeff Santos, and right now it's my time to say I gotta go.